3906.
With the power of Tandem HR, you are in the fast lane on Main Street with Get Down to Business with Shalom Klein, the show for business and jobs. Now, the champion of networking, the advocate of jobs, the guru of business, your host, Shalom Klein.
We are all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship and business. We talk a lot about business here. You're on with Get Down to Business, and I'm your host, Shalom Klein. Remember, you can always download podcasts from Get Down to Business on my website at shalomklein.com. And while you're there, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Shalom Klein. It's going to be a jam-packed week of content and information that you won't want to miss. It's a live show. You can call us at 312-642-5600, 312-642-5600. This week, we'll be joined by guests Dave Kramer, Lori Sackler, Jonathan Lee, and Stephen Shalowitz. And I'll be sharing some comments on the new overtime pay rules that have been introduced. Get Down to Business is powered by Tandem HR, your solution center. You can find them and many of their great resources and tips online at tandemhr.com or give them a call. It's 630-928-0510. That phone number again, write it down, 630-928-0510. So I want to tell you about your $500 cup of coffee, but better than letting me talk about it, I'm joined here in studio by Dave Kramer, who is one of those, I'm going to be mean, and I'm just going to say, you're one of those nerdy guys that I understand. You skipped homecoming, but you attended retirement seminars. Really, Dave?
Really, that is true.
True story, huh?
Yes, I had an early interest in free seminars, and so starting.
But those habits actually have helped many of the rest of us, which is a good thing.
Well, yes, that's true. I've documented some of the ways that I've thought about money since a very early age, and you can find those in the book.
That's great. So in your professional capacity for quite a while now, I don't want to share your age because that wouldn't be appropriate, but for a while you've been a mortgage broker, and in that capacity you've probably reviewed a lot of financial statements. So you've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. Tell us what inspired you to write a book with your partner in crime, Steve Loam.
Yes, good point. It was a conversation with a friend many years ago, I think going on a little over 10 years ago, where they kind of in a frustrating manner said, I'm just no good with money, and I think I never will be. Well, I was taken a little back by that frustration, and I thought, well, why don't I, think about this and try to develop a system or a secret formula for thinking about money differently. And so that's been brewing for a while.
That's great. So $500 cup of coffee, what does that term mean to you? Why that title?
Yes, well, it's obviously an outrageous amount of money to be spending on a cup of coffee. I wouldn't spend that much. I hope you wouldn't either, though some may be able to afford that. The title represents a simple equation that a 20-year-old who spends $5 is really spending 100 times that amount if they consider the amount being taken out of their retirement fund. And, of course, that's many decades later. So, how many 20-year-olds are thinking about retirement? But if you just adjust your thinking, we call that the retirement dollar. If you can think in retirement dollars, it might influence your spending habits.
Well, what a good point. When do you think most people start thinking about retirement? And a follow-up question would be, when should they start thinking about their retirement?
Yes, excellent. I'm not sure when most people start thinking about retirement. I think it's across the board. You find you get a certain distribution of people that start thinking about it early enough, and other people that just don't think about it early enough. When I was when I was attending retirement seminars, I think at the age of 17, I was in a room full of people.
Just a year or two ago, right?
Yeah, of course, a few decades ago. But I was in a room full of people in their 50s and 60s, and they were just learning about planning for retirement at that time. And I was a little shocked by that because I was pretty good at math and thought, okay, this could be a problem. But I recommend that people start thinking about retirement as early as possible. I would say it's not too soon for high school seniors to be starting to think about personal finance, and retirement could be part of a big plan.
So let's talk about the book a little bit. The $500 Cup of Coffee. Once again, sitting here in studio with Dave Kramer, who co-authored the book along with Steve Lohman. They've spent decades, I think it's fair to say, involved in different areas, different industries. But I think you've learned an interesting lesson. So in the book, I know that it talks a little bit about budgeting and education planning and saving and retirement and renting and owning. Tell us why this book is different than the many, many, many other books similar that have been drafted talking about personal finances.
Yes, it is a very broad scope, and I think we cover quite a bit of material, though it is geared towards entry level. Steve and I bring quite a bit of experiences to the table, both successes and failures. But I think one thing that distinguishes our book from others is we stay away from telling people what to do, and we've invented what I think is a new way for people to think about personal finance. So our theory is that if you're just thinking, then behavior will follow. So rather than trying to, map out a course that everybody should follow, start with thinking differently and improve your own, personal relationship with money.
That makes sense, and that's a conversation that should be taking place, that people should be thinking about a lot more, a lot earlier. But also, I think you have a good point in the book about parents and how parents should be having that conversation as well. That for all of the business owners, after all, this is a business show, for all the business owners that are listening, and happy Father's Day to the dads that are out there, what message do you have for them?
To the business owners?
To the business owners, to the parents, to the folks that might be listening and might be able to do something a little bit differently when they come home tonight or tomorrow night and have that conversation with their children.
Yeah, I think that parents should really begin earlier. There are quite a bit of books out there that are geared towards very young children. I started my children thinking about it early on by talking about money a lot, and I even offered my son a chance to either have some kind of toy at the age of 5 or to buy him company stock. And I, of course, gave him an incentive to buy stock, and he chose Disney stock, which he's very glad that he did, and it has outperformed most of my investments over the same time period. So he started quite early, and my daughter is following right along.
Smart child. That's great. So the book itself, where can our listeners find it? How can they learn more about the $500 Cup of Coffee? Once again, outrageous title, but very true point.
Yes. It is on Amazon in an ebook format for now. We are going to be going to print soon, so keep an eye out for that if you want the print book. And check out our website. It's the $500cupofcoffee.com, which has quite a bit of resources, and we're going to be growing that and expanding that so that there's a community aspect to personal finance. And really the goal is to increase financial literacy. Did you know that S&P did a study recently, and they interviewed 150,000 people worldwide, and only about a third could pass a basic financial literacy test. Incredible.
And one thing that you are doing, Dave, aside for the book, is I know, just to give a sneak peek, I know it's not quite ready yet, but you're working on an app. Which will actually help people with that financial literacy and actually take a lot of the brain work out of the process. Tell us a little bit about, in our minute remaining, about what our listeners can look forward to.
Yeah, well, I can only be very brief about that. It's still in development stages, but it will be a savings app that's going to be fun and will help people save instead of spend during certain decision points.
Oh, that's great. I think it will be a tremendous resource for our listeners, and frankly for individuals, for business owners, for families. Frankly, as you said, you were one of those young children that instead of going to homecoming, you actually went to those retirement seminars and good for you, and hopefully more people can learn that lesson. I'm not saying you need to skip your homecoming, but start thinking about personal finances. I guess the lesson out of the $500 cup of coffee. So good for you, Dave Kramer, and we appreciate you joining us here. One more time, I want to make sure you give our listeners that website so people can learn more.
Yes, that's the $500cupofcoffee.com. And thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I once again encourage our listeners to please check out the website, $500cupofcoffee.com. Lots of advice, tips, and information for you. And you could purchase the ebook, which is available. Coming up after the break, we're actually going to continue this conversation. Lori Sackler is going to be joining us on Get Down to Business. You're listening to the show all about small business jobs and entrepreneurship. We're powered by Tandem HR, your solution center. Once again, visit them online, tandemhr.com. But Chicago, don't touch that dial. We've got so much more advice, tips, and information on the show all about small business.